90% of who we are today, we picked up between 0 and 7. So something happened and 3-year-old Sherry made a decision, and 3-year-old Sherry is still running the show around that particular part of your life, and you don't even know it, right? So we wouldn't let a 3-year-old make a life-changing decision or a financial decision or a major relationship decision. But when you don't understand that all of those things are still running the programming, you got to be able to clear it before you can actually be like, okay, now I get to step in to the life that's meant for me.
Welcome to Everyone's Talking Money, where we get brutally honest about money, mindset, and making life richer. Riana, I love how you describe yourself as helping women move from goal setter to goal getter. And I think so many of our listeners can relate to being amazing at setting ambitious goals, whether it's hitting a certain income level, launching a business, or building wealth, but then somehow get stuck in the execution. What's the first thing you notice when a successful woman comes to you and says, I know exactly what I want, but I just can't seem to make it happen?
Yeah. So there's a couple of really incredible things there. So first, that's really important to understand is every single day we think between 65,000 and 85,000 thoughts. 90% of those thoughts are recycled. They're the same thoughts we thought yesterday and the day before and the week before and the month before, in the middle of the night when we're running through all the things, right? And the problem with that is then 75% of those recycled thoughts are negative. Now, I get a lot of pushback. My clients are ambitious women. They're smart. They're driven. They're like, no, I'm good on mindset. Like, I'm so clear. I'm never doing that again. I know all of these things. But what most people don't understand is the way that our brain is wired is that mostly you're thinking about all the things that you don't want instead of what you do. I don't want to be in this financial position. I don't want to be alone. I don't want to be in another relationship where I'm not just cherished and valued. I don't want to, be in this, whatever it is. And the thing about the unconscious mind and the universe is it doesn't hear the qualifying don't. It just knows what you're really focused on. And then when we really look at, when we're looking at all of those pieces, especially around goal setting, when you think about your body and your unconscious mind, so everything from the neck up is our conscious mind, right? It's our goal setter. It's our critical faculties. It's everything we know. It's what makes us successful. And we use it all day long. It's 10%. Which means everything from the neck down, the other 90% is our unconscious mind. So if the conscious is our goal setter, the unconscious mind is our goal getter because it's the operating system. And also it's the literal library of everything you've ever experienced in your entire life. So when incredibly smart, ambitious women come to me and say exactly what you just said, like, I'm clear, but why can't I get there? Why can't I get there? Why do I almost get what I want? And there's a few reasons for that. So one of the biggest reasons is getting that crystal clear clarity on exactly what you want. So most really high achieving women are really clear on kind of the general categories. Like, I really want a fantastic relationship. I want healthy children. I want to, launch this business. I want to have this income level. But it's kind of still like going into a restaurant and saying, hey, I'd like a beverage, protein, a side, and a salad. And then you get exactly what you ordered. You get an iced tea and a pork chop and some steamed carrots and a Caesar salad. Exactly what you ordered. What you wanted was a glass of Chardonnay and a beautiful piece of salmon and some roasted asparagus and an arugula salad with beets and goat cheese, right? So you get what you ordered. You didn't get what you wanted. And so really being able to understand that there's nothing wrong with you. There's nothing that, a lot of women, especially those of us that are high achieving women, are like, I should be able to figure this out. Well, you can't think your way or read your way or talk your way to being able to figure that out because it's in the unconscious mind, right? So you have to tap into that other 90%. So it's like gardening. And when we keep going at something the same way, it's like when you just pluck the top off the weed, it just grows right back, right? So instead, we have to actually figure out what's going on underneath. What are the subconscious things that's driving all these old patterns and cycles and behaviors in neurology so that we can blow that out and replace it with neurology and strategy and behavior that actually allows you to be aligned with what it is that you want to achieve. Because the truth is you cannot solve a problem with the same mind that created it. So we have to do it differently.
And is that what leads to how you help high achieving women lead from deep alignment? And can you tell me a little bit about what that is?
Yes. So my methodology is called the Clear to Create method because the truth is, it's like my tagline, my entire life has always been your very best life. Meaning, whether we've been best friends for 50 years or we just met at coffee, like I want you to live your version of your very best life. It's different for everybody. But you can't go from being stuck by old patterns and past pain and failed relationship or failed business or whatever it is to just living your very best life. It doesn't work like that, right? We have to clear before we can create. So we have to clear the story to create the life. And this is a really big one because so many women will say, I want a different story. Okay, but then you have to stop telling the old one because it just reinstalls all that old neurology, Ugh, everything I do, I almost get there and then it blows up. I'm doing all these things and then somebody, drops the ball. So all of these old things, and every time we talk about that and we reinstall that, the body relives it. And what we're saying is, okay, this is what we're doing. So we're going to keep doing that. And that's what keeps showing up. And we have to clear the cycles to create the confidence. Once we have been in a situation where we thought we knew and then it all blew up, right? Whether it was business or relationships or whatever it was, we tend to find sometimes that being in a position of not being able to trust ourselves. We're like, I don't know. I thought I knew. What the heck? I don't know. I don't even know if I know. Is that a red flag? Am I being ridiculous? We don't know. So we have to clear the cycles to create that confidence. And we have to clear the patterns to create the partnerships because we want aligned, rich, deep relationships professionally and personally. But if we keep bringing the same patterns that have been running the show since between the ages of 0 and 7, you don't get those partnerships. What you get is more of the same. That's why people will say to me, I keep ending up in the same situations over and over again. I keep, marrying the same person or dating the same person or ending up in the same money situation or financial or professional situations. Well, yes, because you're bringing all that old patterns and the old programming and all the old cycles with you. And we have to clear the resentment to create the results, right? Because again, high achieving women have ambitious goals, but there's some underlying stuff there that's kind of self-sabotaging, that's keeping you from actually getting what you want. And so that's where the methodology comes from. And then the quantum pattern protocol is kind of the framework of the how we do it. And it's really in those 3 phases: clear, create, and claim.
So, a phrase from your clear to create method is you can't build something new in a space that's already packed with old junk. And you just alluded to that. So, for someone who looks successful on paper but feels stuck or unfulfilled, what kind of junk are we talking about here? And what patterns show up most often?
So, when we were talking earlier about the unconscious mind and that being, the literal library of everything we've ever experienced. So what we know now because of science is that memory is cellular, right? It's of course we think about it being in the brain and it lives in the circuitry, but memory is cellular. And we see that because we see generations of families doing the same things, or, my mom and my grandma all had this say, everybody was divorced, whatever it is. And we see it in animals. And we see it when someone gets an organ transplant and couldn't stand pickles their entire life. And now they crave pickles all the time. And they come to find out that the person's heart or whatever that they received, that was their favorite food, right? So when we're thinking about that, I also want you to think about kind of the gestalt. So in terms of negative emotion, which is kind of like junk, right? If you think about a piece of ribbon, and for every negative emotion, I'm going to use the emotions that we use in my practice that we clear in this order: is anger, sadness, fear, guilt, shame, and then all the limiting beliefs and limiting decisions and stories and things that we say about ourselves from all the stuff we've been through. Each one of those emotions has a ribbon. And in our lifetime, every single time we have a significant emotional experience of each one of those emotions, a marble goes on that ribbon, right? So today, when something happens that makes you sad or angry or whatever, it's not really the today thing. It's the 30, 40, 50, 60 years of marbles that's behind it, that gestalt, that's that charge. So that's that negative charge that's being held in a cellular level in your body. And when it's not released properly, then we see things show up like patterns and cycles that never get broken. We see anxiety, depression, autoimmune disorder, illness, injury, disease, physical weight that can't be released. All of this stuff shows up in the body because all of that stuff is there. And when we can release it in a way that's not going back into the pain and the trauma that caused the problem in the first place, then we get to create space so that you can actually receive what's meant for you.
So how do we start to get rid of some of that junk? And you have an order as to, so you address the anger first, because anger is usually a result of something else: sadness, hopelessness. It may be a reaction, but it's not a primary emotion. It's sadness or helplessness. So how do you start to release these these marbles
Yeah.
one by one.
So that happens during the clearing phase in a process that I use called quantum time release. And quantum time release is a multidimensional technique that's been used for thousands of years. That's what it does is it clears. It's a combination of timeline work and alchemical forgiveness and clearing of all of the old story, but it allows us to transmute all of that and release it again without going back into anything that you have conscious memory of. And then we get to future pace and get the learnings of what you needed to know. And then future pace, having new relationship with those emotions going forward. So in that clearing phase, right, it's all around, releasing what's no longer yours to carry so that you can remember who you truly are. And first, it has to start with that level of clarity. So, really getting crystal clear on where you are and what you want and what's driving it underneath, some of the old stories, some of the old junk that's in the way, so that we can then do a full dysfunction detox and use quantum time release and use some other modalities to actually get rid of the emotional and energetic residue that's keeping you in loops and survival strategies and all those things. And then we get to discover and you get to reclaim your essence and you actually get to separate your true self from all the noise and the conditioning and the stories and the old things that so you can actually start to really begin to meet the real you or a version of you that you maybe haven't seen.
So how do you do this work with people? Is it more questioning, having them share stories? How do we get to this process? How do we identify them? Because and our emotions, our money, it's all tied together. We grow up and we think and we operate as if what we're doing is completely quote unquote normal, right? We just think it's normal to get that mad or feel this certain way about money or anything in life, right? We just think it's normal. And so much of it is our environment, how we were raised, how we grew up. Some of it, is genetics, I guess, if you will. Um, but how do you start to help someone address it? Like day one, you're going through the process and making them realize like, oh, this isn't necessarily quote unquote normal. You're carrying a lot of stuff with you.
Yes. So I love that question. So this work is very different than a traditional therapeutic environment or a therapeutic model. So, and don't get me wrong, therapy is great. I love therapy. But when you've done all the things, right? You've talked about it in therapy, you've talked about it with your financial advisor, you've talked about it with your girlfriends, you've read all the books, you've done all the things. And there's still, so a lot of clients come to me that are entrepreneurs and there's a lot of money story there. And the thing is, that we talked about earlier is if you want a new story, you have to quit telling the old one. We don't need to go back to the thing that happened to you when you were 5 that made you sad, that made you say, well, I better be really quiet or really loud, or I have to earn love, or I have, whatever the things are that have gone on in our childhood and adolescence. So those things aren't really even relevant. And so the beautiful thing about this work is it's not going back to relive and rehash. This is about clearing so we can create what's next for you. And inside of that 3 phases of the quantum pattern protocol, then there's all the frameworks of the how, right? So to answer your question around clarity, so first we're going to, actually create your menu. So we're going to do a values elicitation and we're going to do a non-negotiables and a desires list so that whether we're talking about money, career, relationships, we have an asset then to run it through to understand if it is then a clean yes or a clean no. So when you start making values-driven decisions where you can powerfully stand in that place of trusting and knowing, then it takes you out of that middle of the maybe, which is like the devil, right? It's where the noise and the drama and the decision fatigue comes from. And then a lot of times we just get stuck there and then we don't do anything because, again, we don't trust ourselves. We don't know if this is the right thing, the wrong thing. And so inside of in that kind of blueprint, and then as we move into that creation phase, where it's really about building that new reality from the inside out, and understanding, the identity that you're stepping into and that activation, and then giving you the habits, right? So a lot of this work is really heavy on clarity and awareness, which is great. It's the foundation for any kind of change and transformation, but it's not enough. Because if we're going to blow out all that old neurology and strategy of all the stuff that's been running the show that isn't working and keeping you stuck and keeping you from achieving the things that you want to achieve, we have to replace it with something else. Otherwise, it's just more of the same and you end up in this maddening loop, right? There's so many people that come to me and they're like, I don't know what's wrong with me. I've been in therapy for years. I've done all this work. I still go right back to the old stuff Because when life comes at you, which it always will, if you haven't replaced the neurology, it's like, bam, you just go back to what you know because the unconscious mind can't fill in the blanks. So we go back to what we know: chaos, drama, self-sabotage, doubt, questioning, compromising, giving up the parts of us that are really who we are because we think that we have to be something else to make someone else like us, love us, whatever, trust us, whatever. And then we get to talk about the aligned achievement framework, which is the goal setting piece. So once we've cleared everything that is keeping you stuck and not serving you and gotten crystal clear about what you really want, now we get to play in the space of using my quantum goal setting process where we reverse engineer it. And the reason we do that is we create the goal in a very specific way. And as though it's happened, right? On December 31st, 2025, I'm celebrating la la la, $1 million in revenue, whatever it is. And then I'm going to ask you, what has to happen in the second before that you achieve that to understand that you've made it? So in that instance, it might be I open up my banking or my investment account and there it is, right? You can see the $1 million. And then we actually micro step backwards and we reverse engineer the entire thing back to today. So what has to happen just before that? Well, what has to happen just before that? And using that question in quantum linguistics taps into a different part of our brain, because just like not being able to fill in the blank for behavior and neurology and strategy, when we're setting goals and we're trying to achieve them and we're like, all right, I'm starting today and 6 months from now, this is what's going to happen. All right, what do I need to do next? We miss like 75% of the most important pieces going forward. So when we reverse engineer them and we micro step backwards, we get all the pieces. We have a blueprint. So when we're like, I don't even know what my name is, let alone what to do next to achieve this goal, you have it. But then we take it a step further because at this point in the work, we've already done your quantum time release. So we've done timeline work. So now we take that goal and we actually install it on your timeline so that you get to experience it in all 5 senses. What do you see? What do you hear? What do you feel? What's around you? And we make it a movie. And so, because the brain doesn't know the difference between something that's visualized with emotion and something that actually happens, right? We see that with athletes all the time. Like the last Olympics that Michael Phelps was in, he dove in and his goggles broke and he swam that blind and he won that race because he had visualized, he knew how many strokes to the wall, right? His brain already experienced it. And what that does then is it ignites the reticular activating system in the brain. So now it's laser focused for actually looking for and recognizing all the people and resources and experiences and opportunities that you need to actually make sure that you get to achieve this instead of just spending the rest of your life wishing for it. So it's like, if you're going to buy a white Lexus, all of a sudden, everywhere you look, you see white Lexuses, right? Or you're out looking for hearts in the world and you see it in the stars and the coffee and the clouds and the leaf on the ground and all the things. It's the same. So we have to ignite that reticular activating system in the brain because otherwise you're not looking for it. Those things that need to align, you're not going to see them. It's kind of the same in relationship where people say, all the men that I meet are, selfish, they're emotionally unavailable and all the things. Yep. And when that's what we're focused on, that's all you can see. When you flip that script, things change.
We can really do that in any area of our lives. So you mentioned, I want to make $1 million on this date and work backwards, but we can do it with anything, right? You're creating a SMART goal. It's specific, measurable, achievable. I forget the R. And timely. You're creating that, but you're not just creating it and saying, okay, well, here's my goal, go do it. It's the backward steps. And I think so often we think of, well, what do we need to do next to achieve that goal? And forward thinking, but by thinking of, I've achieved it and looking backwards, it's making those steps, I feel like, much more real than planning it.
Yes.
And so that's a very interesting way to retrain your brain.
Yes. And in my world, rather than SMART goals, they're smarter goals, right? Because we add the energetics and the emotion, and then we add the reverse engineering and the reticular activating system. So love that you brought that up because yes, and we're going to completely reverse engineer it so that we back into the starting point, and then we have every little micro step laid out for us.
I'm sure you have to push them pretty hard for these goals and to become smarter goals as well, because I feel like we get so bogged down with that junk. So is what's the process of, do we have to clear the junk before we set goals? Do we set goals, then clear the junk? What's like kind of the timeline of the way to create this new way of thinking and really your new life?
Yes, I love that. And that's why the process goes clear, create, claim. We have to clear before we can create anything. Otherwise, you're just building on a broken foundation, on a crumbling foundation, right? So yes, first we clear. And the way that, and it's interesting because when at the beginning, I'll do a little bit, something I call your limitless life launch call, where we really use quantum linguistics to get to what's underneath. And often there's some uns or some lesses there that, powerless, hopeless, unworthy, whatever it is, way, 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 way deep. But when I ask women, tell me about the life on the other side of this work. Like, we can talk about what it's going to cost you to stay stuck and stay here. But I want to know on the other side, what are you doing or not doing differently than you're doing or not doing right now? What lights you up? What are you doing? What are you experiencing? And at this point, oftentimes there's tears and there's a moment of, I don't even know how to answer that. I don't even know what I want. I've spent so long either putting everybody else's needs first, taking care of everyone else, or just believing that, I would never actually get the thing that I wanted. So because of the way that this process works, by the time we get to that piece of where we're going to reverse engineer goals, now it's fun. Now it's playtime because we've gotten rid of all that old stuff. And we've actually gotten crystal clear on what it is that they really want. Because even when people say, no, I know what I want, and then we dive in, they're like, oh, it's still kind of that vague menu we're ordering, right? It's that, yeah, I know I want a beverage and a protein and a side and a salad. I know that. Okay, but what is that? So really specifically. So in that process, yes, to answer your question, first we're going to clear, then we get to create. And then once we've done that and we've reverse engineered those goals and installed them on your timeline, now we get to move into that next phase, which is the claiming phase. And this is where it's fun, right? So the clearing and the creating is really like that intensive, getting rid of all of that, getting you set up to live the life and have the love and the abundance and the joy and the peace and the health and all the things. But when we move into that claim phase, then it's really about owning and integrating and embodying that. So when we can really understand and standing in this new identity and letting go of needing external permission and really claiming that power and that truth and that transformation so that we can integrate it so it aligns with your environment and your decisions and your energy. And this is really, fully aligned now with the woman that you're becoming so that you get to embody her and effortlessly walk and lead and love from this new frequency. And you get to just celebrate and shine and magnetize with grace, because really that's, so important when we talk about frequency, because for so many people, let me give you a good example. What's your favorite kind of music, Sherry?
Jimmy Buffett is my
Okay.
favorite.
Love, 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 love.
He's his own genre.
He is. And then what's your least favorite can't stand it music?
Like screaming rock.
Okay, perfect. Me too. We can be besties. So imagine for a second that everything you want, the money, the love, the health, the life, the relationships, the career, the business, the travel, all of it is on Sirius XM 105. It's Jimmy Buffett all day long, right? But what happens is on the unconscious space and a frequency perspective, a lot of times we're hanging out at channel 79, which is Metallica all day, every day. And you can't even turn it down, let alone turn it off. And the truth is you can't hear Jimmy Buffett on the Metallica station. You have to raise your frequency. You have to change the frequency to the channel where you get to live that life and have all the things that you want. And so inside of all of this work as well, I teach you how to become a magnet for miracles, because that's one of my core values. So my values are love, generosity, belief in possibility, impact, and being a magnet for miracles. And that's how I live my life. It's how I run my business and my practice. And when you get to be a magnet for miracles, where everything shows up that way, right? Because everything can be a miracle or nothing can be a miracle. And it's our conscious mind and unconscious mind always hold two beliefs, ones that are really powerful and push us forward, and ones that are really dysfunctional and limiting and keep us stuck. And so that frequency work is also something that we do really early on, so that you get to, get to that Jimmy Buffett station as fast as you can and learn how in that process, because we're human and we're always going to fall back into, thinking about something we didn't want or thinking about something that is kind of spirals us, but I teach you how to use a rubber band to actually rewire your neurology in 3 days. And it's incredible because the point is not to like have toxic positivity and that, oh, we're only going to think happy things. It's to understand when we're in the yuck or in the Metallica frequency, to be able to have a pattern interrupt, replace it with a better feeling thought, raise that frequency, be in gratitude, be in service of someone else, think about something that you do really want as though it's happened. And then all of a sudden, everything around you in your physical reality starts to shift.
Can you give me an example, like for our listeners that just have junk with money? Can
Hmm.
you give an example of like the Metallica type thinking
Hmm.
and how we get up to the Margaritaville type
Yes,
thinking?
yes, yes, yes. So I have a client who has been when she came to me, she was in a situation where she had quite a bit of debt and she was starting this business, and then all of a sudden one day she had all this furniture. She's an interior designer, and she went to her warehouse and the police were there and they confiscated all of this stuff. And she'd been working with this wholesaler for a year or more, and apparently there was embezzlement that happened inside of that thing, and there was, the people who were selling the furniture didn't really own it and whatever it was, but she lost all of her inventory and it was just gone. They seized it. And so when she came to me, she had just borrowed more money from her parents, and she was in this place. She had gone through a divorce. She had two little ones, and she was so stuck in the story of, I'll never have enough money. I'll never get out of this hole. And now we just redid her business plan, and we just hired two people on her kind of creating her unicorn team, and she just has expanded. She's buying a house, she's moving to Virginia Beach closer to her parents. Like, we got really clear on what she wanted, and she stopped focusing all her energy on all the things she didn't want because it kept showing up in every way. And so we've solved the money thing. She's now has more money flowing in an abundant, easy way. That's what I like to call relaxed abundance, right? We're not like hyper attached to the how or the when. This again, I'm going to use my restaurant analogies of like when we go out to dinner together, we're going to sit there and enjoy each other's company and catch up, right? We're going to place our order. We're going to have a glass of wine. We're not going to be running into the kitchen every 5 minutes saying, are you cooking my steak at 400 degrees or 450 degrees? Did you triple wash my arugula? Like, are you bringing dessert at 7 or 7:05? No, we placed our order. We trust when it's ready, they're going to bring it to us. So it's an important thing energetically to get out of Metallica and get to Margaritaville is placing the order and then trusting and not obsessing about the how or the when, because what that does is it pushes it farther away, because it's then coming from that place of something's missing, something's wrong, something's broken, something's not here, that lack energy. And it it really does keep us from actually calling in that which we want. So she took her story that she had lived since she was a little girl, and not because, I mean, her parents are very comfortable. She didn't grow up in a crisis financial environment, but the stories around, everything that she had absorbed and then continued to speak out loud and to continue to think and continue to make decisions based on that was keeping her in a place of never, ever, ever being able to get out of that hole. And so in a very short amount of time, we've flipped all of that. And now she gets to have this incredible business and raise her fees and just really call in aligned clients and work with the people that are meant for her, and not the crazy people who don't pay her and all the things that she kept attracting, all of these people that, defaulted on their pay, like, just kept attracting all the things that make you then continue to have not enough money.
Your quantum pattern protocol helps women step out of survival mode into what you call full spectrum self expression. So tell me a little bit about what full spectrum self expression is and what it looks like for someone.
So in kind of what we talked about a little bit in that claim phase of really getting clear on who you are and what you want, because so many women have spent their life, maybe wife, mama, in their profession, sister, daughter, taking care of elderly parents and children, like all the things. And that question of what do you want is a really hard one. So if we don't know what we want, and then you'll never get it, first of all. But then the other piece of that is being able to stand in a place of fully owning all of it. So I teach a frame called cause and effect. And when we're in cause, there's peace and there's power and there's clarity and there's creativity. When we're in effect, there's reasons and there's drama and there's friction and there's noise. And the effect is kind of that victimhood archetype of I always get the short end of the stick, or I always get the raw end of the deal, or this always happens to me, or I can't believe I'm here again. And to pull yourself out of that space and be in cause, which means, look, I'm fully responsible for everything that's happening in my life. Like, I don't know why I created this particular situation, but then you have to ask yourself a couple questions. Number one, what does this have to do with me? If you're feeling like triggered or feeling like you have to be small or quiet, or, you can't express yourself and say what you want because what will people think? Because you never have. So I get a lot of women will say that to me. Well, what will people think if all of a sudden I stand up for what I want and say, but I don't want to go river rafting. I want to go to the spa. I don't want to go golfing. I want to go horseback riding. And it's like, well, you're going to it's okay for them to be shocked. It's like people that are, do hair their whole life and all of a sudden they go into real estate and nobody thinks of them as a realtor, right? You have to step into owning that. And you have to embody that. And it might take people a little time to catch up, giving you, number one, the space, clearing out all that old story and all of the old self-talk and the negativity, getting crystal clear on what you want and setting that up so that between now and dead, you get to actually live that version of you instead of, again, like having that sense of, am I ever going to wake up in the morning and just feel like happy and alive and energized without the pit in my stomach of worrying about or longing for or wishing for this piece that's missing.
Well, I think it's so hard because as women, although it's not said to us directly, we're rewarded for putting everyone before ourselves and not knowing what we want or not expressing it or not being comfortable with saying, well, this is really what I want to do, or this is what I think, or even if it's this is where I want to eat dinner, it's, oh, I don't know, you can pick, it's okay. And when you start to change that, it society, people around you, whoever it is, it's like, whoa, like that's abrasive. Like you're too much. And it's so hard. But it's like, we're not saying anything crazy. I'm just saying what I want. And what's wrong with that? Right. I'm not shoving it down your throat. It doesn't impact your life. I'm just saying what I want and what's good for me. And that's not selfish. And I think so
Absolutely.
often we're taught that that is selfish.
Absolutely. So true. And so many women get so, well, what if I do this work for myself and I invest in myself and I do that? Am I being selfish? No, this is the very best thing that you could do for you, for your family, for your future family, because when you shift energetically, your entire world around you shifts energetically, right? When we talk about thought, have you ever heard of that Dr. Emoto, Sherry? Like in the mid 90s, he would photograph really high speed photography, water crystals. So he did this whole
No.
study around like what happens when we speak certain words or say certain words into water. And he noticed that if he played like the Metallica music versus like soft jazz, the crystals were really distorted and mutated and kind of ugly versus like they looked like snowflakes. So what he did is a whole experiment around like taping words and speaking words to water, like I love you versus I'm going to kill you versus you're kind versus you're stupid. It's all these different things. And then he photographed them and you can see the difference in the molecular structure of the water. And what makes that research so powerful is the world is 70% water. Our bodies are 70% water. So when we're having an energetic exchange with each other or with ourselves and what we're thinking about and what we're saying about ourselves, about the world around us, we're actually changing the molecular structure of everything. It's so powerful because every thought has a consequence and carries emotion, and every one of those thoughts and emotions carry beliefs, and the beliefs that are associated with them are often that of an infant, a child, or an adolescent, because 90% of who we are today, we picked up between 0 and 7. So something happened and 3-year-old Sherry made a decision, and 3-year-old Sherry is still running the show around that particular part of your life, and you don't even know it, right? So we wouldn't let a 3-year-old make just a life-changing decision or a financial decision or a major relationship decision. But when you don't understand that all of those things are still running the programming, you got to be able to clear it before you can actually be like, okay, now I get to step in to the life that's meant for me. I get to be the version of me that is true to myself, who gets to speak freely and who falls in love with yourself again, right? Where you can fall in love with yourself again and trust yourself and really, confidently hold boundaries and beautifully communicate your needs and then get to deepen the richness in every single one of your relationships.
Rihanna, as we wrap up, I know our listeners are probably feeling inspired, but maybe also a bit overwhelmed thinking about all the patterns they need to clear or work they need to do. For someone who's listening right now and recognizing themselves in this conversation, maybe successful on paper, but feel stuck or unfulfilled, what's one thing they can do today to start moving from autopilot into that deeper alignment you talk about? What's the first step?
Oh my gosh. The very first step, I want to give all of your listeners access to the ELLE. So the ELLE is the Extraordinary Love Index. It's a diagnostic assessment. So this is not, a 30-second Disney princess quiz. Like this is 40 questions, but we're going to look at 9 key critical areas of what makes you you. And you're going to get a 28-page report on every single one of those areas that's going to show you your impact score, your trauma score, your communication piece, your identity, your all of these different things. And it's going to show you based on your scores what you might be experiencing, the danger in staying there, and what you can do right now to start shifting that. So I would love to offer that to everyone. That's the very best place to start. It's going to give you more insight than you've probably ever had in your life about you and why things are showing up the way that they are and where in those specific areas you can do something immediately to help start shift that. So I'll send all of that to you. And that's available at quiz.rianamalia.com and at the website. And of course, it'll be in all the socials.